I've never been much of a gambling man. Oh, save for the odd pound or two here and there on the Grand National every now and again. But other than that, I tend to avoid taking big risks. And perhaps that's what we're like intrinsically as human beings. You know, stepping out of our comfort zone is exactly that. It can be a big risk because we've got the fear of, obviously, of, dare I suggest, maybe losing something, like some money, the fear of not being particularly good at something as well, and just maybe the fear of not really enjoying it. Now, obviously, if you're going to take a gamble in business, that can be an even riskier strategy, because if you produce a new product that's well away from where you would normally be, then you risk alienating a lot of your old customers. And if the product itself isn't any good, then of course you're not going to attract new people towards it, and therefore it's a very risky strategy indeed. And in the automotive world, I don't think anybody's taking bigger risks at the moment than Lotus. Because what we have here is far from their usual product, because it's not a lightweight two-seater sports car. No, this is a large, heavy four-door GT. And if that wasn't enough, it's not powered by a combustion engine, because this is all electric. This isn't a small flutter. This is Lotus going all in. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Lotus Emeya. As always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get started on this week's road test review of the new Lotus Emeya, it is of course the time where I would just ask you to make sure, if you don't mind, that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Once you've done that, make sure you then press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you've watched the review, if you enjoy it, I sincerely hope you do, then obviously give it a little thumbs up, and of course, as always, don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars we feature on the channel, such as the Lotus Emeya, and of course on the AutoEV channel overall. Now, when it comes to cars, I am quite a traditionalist. I do like car brands that have got some heritage behind them. But having worked in the motor industry for nearly 30 odd years, I am also aware that it's a commercial world out there and things can't just stay the same. Things have got to progress and move on. And that's exactly what Lotus are doing. Now, in fairness, other manufacturers have done exactly the same. Witness the likes of Porsche. It knew for a while that, you know, a lot of customers that it had were also driving around in sort of like big SUVs. So of course they were dividing their loyalties between Porsche and another brand. And therefore they stood the risk of losing them completely to that other brand. So what was their answer? We build our own SUV. And they did with the KN, and such was the success with that car, it's their biggest selling product across the globe. And this is Lotus getting its ducks in a row. It knows the world is going to change, and it also knows that there are only so many people out there going to buy small, lightweight, two-seat, English-built sports cars. It knows that the world is going to have to move on, and some of those customers are going to need to be practical. Hence the reason why they now have the new Electra, their large SUV, a car I'm going to be testing next week. And of course now this, the Emeya, which is their big four-door GT car. But it goes even further than that, as I say, because these two new products are Lotus's first electric products. And they can do that because they're now part of the Geely empire. No longer are Lotus this small little cottage industry sort of like manufacturer stuffed up in Norfolk. They're a global brand, and they need to be a global player to make this work. Hence the reason they're expanding their portfolio, and hence the reason why we now have products like the Electra and the Emeya. So this is a car that's going to take on the likes of the Porsche Taycan, the Audi S e-tron GT, and Polestar's forthcoming Polestar 5. But of course, it's a very big departure for a company like Lotus, where we're used to seeing things such as the Elise, the Evora, the Emira. So can they get it right? Can this really be a global player up against the might of manufacturers such as Porsche and Audi? However, as always, before we start the main review, let's take a look at the main bullet points of the new Lotus Emeya. So the Lotus Emeya is the follow-up to the Electra, the company's electric SUV, and this is billed by Lotus as an all-electric Hyper GT. Two versions of the Emeya are available, the S that we have here or the more powerful R, but in 2025 these are being reconfigured as the Emeya 600 and the Emeya 900. All Emeyas come with a 102 kilowatt hour battery that can deliver up to 379 miles of range on the WLTP cycle, depending on the model. And prices for the revised range now start from just under £85,000 and climb to just over £140,000, depending on model and specification chosen. So a radical departure for Lotus. The big question is, can they pull it off? Can we really see this as being a credible rival for the likes of the Porsche Taycan and the Audi S e-tron GT? Well, of course, the only way we're going to find that out is, of course, by putting it through the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car. And even out here in the sunshine, it's still the AutoEV one. Now, as always, we're going to start with how the car looks and talk about its styling. If there's one word you could certainly never accuse Lotus of being, it's retro. Even despite the fact they've got every right to be with the back catalogue of fantastic looking cars that they have, you know, from the Elite, still one of the prettiest cars I think that's ever been designed, to the Esprit, all versions of the Elan, to the Elise, to the Exige, to the Eclat, to the Excel, all of the cars, even the latest Emeya, none of them really look backwards. They're not one for retro styling. And of course the Emeya is no different to that. It's a very futuristic looking car, I think. Obviously its style ties it in with the Electra, the large SUV, as I say, that we're going to be reviewing next week, and the Emeya sports car. You'll see certain elements of that around it, but none of it, as I say, you could be accused of saying it's a bit retro looking. It's very modern, it's very sharp, it's very on point. I love these sort of like twin, I think they almost remind me of almost like ice skate blades. You know, these sort of like, you know, lights that are in here, your daytime running lights, and of course your turn indicators. And your main headlight units are in this sort of like gaping hole here. Now there's a huge amount of aero work on the car. You know, again, Lotus, very, very clever when it comes to sort of like their engineering. And of course their styling department talks a lot about aerodynamic efficiency on the car, rightly so, because that's going to help with range. So of course we've got vents sort of like going in here that take sort of like airflow around down the side of the car. You've got this brilliant sort of like front grille here that has these, well, they're opening and closing vents, and they open like a petal, like the flower, the petals on a flower, lotus flower. Brilliant, isn't it? But these will open and close depending on sort of like cooling that's needed for the car. One thing I was a little bit concerned about, and please forgive me for this, I used to run a Lotus as a company car. In fact, I had 2 Elises as company cars because I used to work at a dealership where we had the Lotus franchise. And technology in Lotus, has it been happy bedfull over the years? I don't know, but there's a huge amount of tech on this car. You know, there's going to be something like 20 odd cameras around the car eventually when it comes to running full autonomous driving, which I find bizarre considering that the company strapline is for the drivers. Anyway, that's what they're talking about. Anyway, there's a huge amount of tech on it. There's a camera mounted down in the front there as well, and you'll see more as we go around the side of the car. But some nice sculpting on the bonnet here. Obviously there's this black panel here, which then combines into this sort of like duotone colour scheme that the car has, which I think works really well inside profile. And of course you've got your new big Lotus badge that's on the front there. More simplified, the Lotus badge. It's nice. It's almost like a little sort of like reinterpretation of the original badge from way back when Colin Chapman had the company. And of course it's still got Chapman's initials on it as well. But it's a striking looking thing from the front, isn't it? It certainly turns heads, and I've had a few people just come up to me this weekend. In fact, this lady just who's jogging past now has just stopped and gone, wow, what on earth is that? That's the type of reaction that you want for a new Lotus. Now this is a big car. There's no getting away from the physical size of it. It's over 5 metres long, 400 millimetres longer than a Porsche Taycan, and just 150 millimetres shorter than a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. This is a really big car. It has massive presence on it as well. Now, I was talking earlier obviously about, you know, sort of like technology and cameras and stuff. You're going to have these sort of like, these flaps here are ready for these LiDAR sensors. There's another one up on the roof. There's a little panel up on the roof that's going to be for LiDAR. You've got this slightly incongruous looking sort of like blister, if you like, on the door here, which contains a camera unit. And the mirrors also have 2 cameras on them as well to help with that. So I say, there's a huge amount of tech going around the car. 20-inch wheels start the range off. Now, as I say, there's going to be a reconfiguration of the range in 2025. So gone is the S and the R, and it's going to be replaced by the 600 and 900. And they're going to have sort of like derivatives within those as well to make it slightly less confusing, dare I suggest, for customers. But the base car gets 20-inch wheels, but you can option it up to 22s if you want. You can also option it with carbon ceramic discs if you want. This particular car's just got the steel discs fitted to it, which have been fantastic, in fairness, my time with it. And these are the 22-inch wheels on this particular car. You see what I was saying about that two-tone bodywork here, because it does actually sort of like make it look a little bit lower and sleeker, especially with this sort of like treatment here, where the body car doesn't go all the way up to the roof. It stops halfway up the pillar, so it gives you that visual trick of lowering the car. And of course, the usual other trick of putting this bit down is black as well, pinches the bodywork in like that. Now, a four-door Lotus, they've been around before in some respects. Well, I suppose if you count things like the Lotus Cortina and the Lotus Carlton. Those are your four-door Lotuses. But four-seat Lotuses, well, that's not unheard of either, because of course you had things such as the Elan Plus 2, the Eclat, the Excel. They've done it before. And I don't know if you remember when Danny Bahar was running the company, they had that weird thing at the Paris Motor Show once where they showed a pile of new models. And there was a four-door version that they were going to do in there, a big sort of like saloon car, almost to take on the Aston Martin Rapide back then. So it's not unheard of, but like I say, it's a big old car, isn't it? Now, the only slightly odd thing is, I say, apart from all the tech on, obviously you've got, sorry, I should have said you've also got the pop-out door handles, because the car's unlocked, they pop out. And you can either use the most beautiful of keys that I've ever seen, but I'm so nervous about using it, this little, what they call the Pebble, gorgeous, or you can use a card, you know, against the pillar, very Tesla-like, which I have to admit is pretty much what I've been using this week, because I'm frightened to drop in that because it's so lovely. And they'll pop out when you unlock the car. The other thing that I'm just, I don't know, a bit thinking about is there's an electric charging flap, and you know my feelings on them. Why do we need electric charging flaps? We don't need electric petrol caps. Why do we need to have electric charging flaps? But anyway, it's got one. There you go. But yeah, big old car, isn't it? Now, I spoke about aerodynamic efficiency there, so just to give you an idea, the drag coefficient of the Emeya, when it's fitted with the standard 20-inch wheels, is just 0.21 CD, which is very low indeed. You know, I mean, that's not much more than something like a Mercedes-Benz EQS, those type of cars, which are obviously very aerodynamically efficient. So Lotus have done really, really well to get the aero working on the car. And a lot of it's active, because what you have here is a twin spoiler, effectively. Depending on the mode you're in or the speed you're in, this section of the booklet here will actually come up, and then underneath that there's another blade as well. So it's a dual spoiler that's tucked underneath here. But look here, you can actually, not quite, my arms aren't long enough, but you can see the tyre through this hole here. So the airflow, the pressure that builds up in the wheel arch is then vented out through the back here, and of course it will slide round the back, so it's not being disrupted by anything else. It's a really slippery car. And I love the rear end of this car here. Again, the sort of like the signature light bar, as you'd expect, with the beautiful little sort of like almost petal-like graphics in it, the lovely Lotus lettering across. Down at the bottom, obviously, you get things such as parking sensors and a really cool looking diffuser again that will obviously help with the airflow. But there's nothing on here to sort of like break anything up. As I say, that spoiler, when it's not needed, folds neatly away. And really nice shut lines, I have to say, as well. You got a high level integrated brake light up at the top there. I think it's a really striking looking car, I really do, I really like it, but there's no getting away from the fact how big it is. As I say, it's a physically bigger car than the likes of the Taycan or the Audi e-tron GT. See, it's nearly the size of a Mercedes-Benz S-Class, and it's quite tall. That's the other thing. And this actually car, when you stop it, it sort of like goes down, because it's got air suspension, which we'll talk about when we're driving it. It is quite a tall car as well. It doesn't really matter what I think about it, does it? It matters more what you think. What do you think about it? If you were in the market for a car like this, would it tempt you? Are you an old school Lotus driver? Do you not want anything to do with the sort of the new way that Lotus are going? Or do you like the look of what they're up to? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. So it's a Grand Tourer, so therefore it has to have practicality about it. And it does. Because Lotus say that's a 509 litre boot as standard, and if you fold the split folding rear seat down, it goes up to 1,388 litres. Both of those figures are way in excess of what you get out of a Porsche Taycan and an Audi e-tron GT. In fact, 509 litres is bigger than you get in a BMW iX SUV. It doesn't seem like 509 litres, but there is actually quite a bit of space in there, in fairness. It's quite shallow, that's the only thing I will say. There's a tiny little space up at the front, underneath the front bonnet. I'll show you in a second, but it's not really for putting suitcases in. There's a lift-up panel here. You lift up the boot floor, there's some, you know, sort of like storage there for things such as tyre inflation system, you know, some dusters and stuff like that. But actually, if you pack the boot, it's not too bad. Now, a Lotus Emeya owner's not going to have some ratty old suitcases like I have, but they're here to show a purpose. By the way, if you want to sponsor a video by giving me a set of new luggage, I'll prostitute myself for a new set of luggage, by the way. So there's our large one down there. You can also then put the medium one just next to it there like that. Then we can put a rucksack, well, my camera bag, right down the back there. Then we can put one of our carry-ons there, and then our other one will sit on the top there, and actually you can get more soft bags and coats on the top there. So actually it's a very usable car, and because obviously it's a lift back, it's more practical than you get with the likes of the e-tron, the Audi e-tron GT or the Porsche Taycan, because it's not, they're booted saloons effectively trying to squeeze them in through. So yeah, it is practical. Now underneath the front you've got 34 litres of storage as well to keep your cables in, so you don't have to unload your luggage if you need to access your cable, which is always quite a good idea, I think. It's not a huge amount of space, but it's just enough for your cable bag there, which is plenty, keeps them nice and out of the way. And I love all little bits of detail abound. You know, you've got things like Pioneers since 1948 underneath here, with the Lotus badge just sort of like etched into the boot floor handle. It's a quality that you're going to see around the rest of the car that maybe in some respects, without being rude, we've never really been used to with Lotus before, but it's very much evident in this car. Now, one of the big things about the Emeya is, I think, the amount of interior space that you get in the car. As I say, it's a physically big car, and it's much better in terms of its accommodation than the likes of, say, the Taycan from Porsche or the e-tron GT from Audi, as I shall now demonstrate. Now, it is a GT car, and it's interesting because I did sort of like say about, I think it was the Audi, when I reviewed that, and I did sort of like say, oh, you know, it's a bit tight to get in the back of, and a chap did say to me, he said, well, you know, what do you expect for a GT car? And that's a fair point, it is, you know, they're not saloon cars. This is somewhere between the two, I would suggest, so you do have a huge amount of legroom here. There's a massive amount of legroom here. That's my driving position. I'm only 5'8". Oh no, there is a flat, well no, almost a flat floor. There's a little bit of a riser. That mat's bubbled up a little bit, but you've got a tiny little bit, which is odd considering it's a bespoke EV. Anyway, there we go. You've got a rear screen here for the rear passengers to control certain things, such as the sound system, such as the sunroof as well. Now I'm going to talk to you about this panoramic roof in a little second, but this touchscreen back here does, and this is what I'm talking about. All this sort of tech on a Lotus. It's really odd to see, but it's all done really well, and I'll talk more about that when we're in the front. The audio system you can also control there, and also, as I say, you can move, he says, the back seat, the back rest of the front passenger seat. So a bit like you can with Hyundai and some other manufacturers, you can actually move that seat. So if you're being driven in the car, then you can actually get more legroom in that sense. Which is interesting because as you know, Lotus is, or maybe you don't, Lotus is part of Geely. You know, the big sort of Chinese conglomerate that owns Polestar, Volvo, you know, those type of things. And the Chinese market, you know, they're not interested in small two-seater sports cars. They're interested in big four-door saloon cars. So it's no doubt to really sort of like get a foothold in those sort of like more eastern markets where that's really important, where being driven is more important than, dare I suggest, driving. without still forgetting the drivers, if that makes sense. So I think that's where Emeya's really sort of winning quite well. The only thing I will say is you do feel your legs being quite pushed up. The battery's obviously slung underneath the floor, and it's a big old battery in the car, 102 kilowatt hour. So there is a slightly raised floor in it, you know, to be more comfortable. However, your backrest on the seat can adjust, you can recline it, you know, so you've got good adjustment, you know, for that if you want to have a bit more reclined seat. And the glass roof goes behind your head in that sense. Fold down armrest, pop out cup holders, and again it's just a nice, it's really nicely damped. I keep coming back to it, but the quality's really good. Isofix points, they're nice and easy to get to. They're just little Velcro sort of flaps that hide them, so you pull them up and they're nice and easy to get to. There's some shallow door bins, but again they're leather lined, you know, so again, you know, it's real quality as well. And there's also some vents in the B pillar as well. You may have noticed, or maybe not, when I opened the door there, good, the child locks are on this side, it has double glazing as well. So the frameless doors, it's 4 frameless doors, but they've got double glazing as well, and that will help with the refinement of the car, which we will talk about as I now move to the front, as soon as I figure out a way of getting out here. Right, I have to climb over that way. Avert your eyes. Right, up here. Well, this is unlike any Lotus that I've ever been in. It's not exactly the Spartan cabin of my old Lotus Elise demonstrator, I will say that, that is for sure. But I'll also will say as well, it's very impressive. You know, on the whole, this is a really good interior. There is one little issue I have with it, which I'll get onto in a little bit. But let's talk about what you get with the interior. So first of all, as you can see, it's dominated by this, I think it's 15.1 inch central infotainment system. Now, please, please, please forgive me for this, because when you think of Lotus, there's lots of little people usually say about, you know, what Lotus actually stands for. Lots of, you've probably heard it, yeah, anyway. And there's an element of you that thinks build quality, tech, things like that, it's all just going to go, it's brilliant. Not only is the build quality fantastic, absolutely fantastic. This car is actually produced in China, in fairness, but at a dedicated factory in China, along with the electric SUV. But not only is the build quality fantastic, but the tech just works. It just all works. And it's really good tech as well, you know, in terms of, you know, you sometimes maybe think, oh, you know, when you see it, and again, I mean this with huge respect, maybe sometimes with some of the Chinese manufacturers, if you were to compare them with the likes of BMW, Audi, Mercedes, you know, some of the European manufacturers, the graphics maybe aren't quite so good and things like that. No, it's as good, if not better, than a lot of what the Europeans are doing, you know, in terms of the graphics and stuff and the way this moves. It's absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best, I would say, out there infotainment systems. It's fabulous. I really, really like it. But it is mostly all controlled from this screen. Okay, now obviously you get things such as wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. There's a wireless charging thing down here as well. Now, I mentioned about the keys as well. You get a little Pebble key. You also get a card key like you do with Tesla. And sometimes if you've opened the car or locked it and you haven't quite gotten it, you've got to use this, what is it, the NFC reader. You've just got to pop it on there for a few seconds and it activates. But that's not the end of the world, is it? Other than that, you know, as I say, everything will now start to work through here. So you can see here we've got a range to go 92% charge, 262 miles. Talk about that in a wee bit. And there's various different shortcuts around the screen here, okay? So for instance, if I go into this little symbol here, this is my driving assistance things that I can turn off. So lane keep assist, yes I want to deactivate it, automatic speed limit alarm, switched off. That's as simple as that. You press that little symbol there and it brings up all the shortcuts, you know, for the active safety stuff there. You can delve more into it, so you can do things such as drive modes there. However, there's a separate switch for those as well. You can go in, oh, that's your safety again. You can control the sound of the audio system. Now, the audio system in this thing is phenomenal. 1300 watts KEF audio system with Dolby Atmos surround sound. It is biblically good. I mean, really good. You know, it's fabulous. You know, and there's various different things. You can set up a graphic equalizer. You probably saw a wee bit in the back there. You can change that from the back. You know, you can change the volume of the navigation, the ringtone of the phone and stuff in here. But honestly, the sound quality in this thing is absolutely brilliant. You can change your display, you can go into, you can set up a Lotus account, obviously, you know, for various different things, you know, subscriptions and stuff like that's all in there. And obviously you can change the 7 things in the system, so if you want female voice guidance or male voice guidance, your date and time, etc, etc. You can change all your units and stuff in there as well. That's where that is. So that's sort of buried deeper into the menu system, but you don't need access to that, you know, all the time. But the one things you do need, as I say, the safety systems. That one press brings up this menu straight to the safety systems, and you just turn them off. Easy as that. Right. If you bring up, there's some inbuilt apps into the car. So of course you've got your Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You can also have built-in Spotify, Tidal, and then of course there's your Dolby Atmos surround sound experience thing in there. And then there's various things just for doing Bluetooth media, your phone, and messages and so forth. There's obviously an inbuilt navigation system, which is really very good. And it also has all the charging network in it as well. So look, it's almost like the 3D Google Maps. I mean, really good. I am surprised in some respects, because Polestar and Volvo being part of Geely use Google, they haven't gone straight to Google. But it is very good, the actual sort of, you know, the map itself. So you can change the way it's, so a satellite map, or you can just change it to a normal line map if you prefer that. But the standard system's very good, and as I say, it has all the inbuilt, it has all the charging network inbuilt into it as well. Really very good. What was I going to do there? All right, so if I go into the car thing here, there's various things you can do from in here. Why is it not doing this now? Oh, here we go, yeah. So you can open the spoiler, the roof. Okay, so if you press this, this is one of these electrochromatic roofs. You can have it either clear or opaque, okay? Depending obviously on what you want. There's no blind, so it's either clear or opaque. But you can go further than that, because what you can do is divide it up into different diamond patterns. So you can have a pattern on it as well. You can just, so you can have one side open, the other side closed. What? This is a Lotus. How on earth is it? And it works. It's really good. I really like that. I can play with that for hours, you know, just putting different patterns up. My daughter loved that. That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, so again, there's various different things you can just control through the screen. So, you know, you can open your charging flap from there, you can open the spoiler, you can open the boot, things like that. But again, there are some shortcut buttons to those things as well. Well, not the roof. Here, for instance, there's a boot switch on the door, an actual physical switch on the door, so you can open up that. You don't have to use the screen. And the front boot is opened by a lever down in the footwell, not like a Tesla where you've got to go into there. So, you know, in fairness, there are some good physical buttons around it. And that's going to bring me on to my next thing. The quality of these buttons. I don't think I've sat in a car for such a long time, let alone one wearing a Lotus badge, that is so beautifully done with the switchgear. Proper solid metal switchgear. You know, my old Elise had Vauxhall Cavalier indicator stocks. Not anymore. These are beautiful. I mean, these aren't metal, but these are plastic. But they feel solid. And the action they have, there's a little ball into the socket, and it just feels right. And then you've got the, I mean, there's my cup thing, you can see it. The transmission toggle, if you like, you know, to bring it back to drive, this big metal transmission lozenge, if you like, and then P for park. And then these two either side, these ones here, are for adjusting your temperature up and down. And then there's a little bank of switches, touch-sensitive switches in there, you know, for maximum defrost, automatic, heated rear screen, locking and unlocking, and opening the glove box, which you just do from there, and it opens up this reasonable sized glove box as well. That's really nice. The only downside in some respects is when we're talking about the climate control, whilst you've got the temperature adjust there, if you want to adjust the airflow from the vents, you've got to go into the screen. So you press the temperature, it brings up the actual climate menu, and a bit like Tesla and some other manufacturers that are now doing it, you then move the vents via the screen. Okay, fair enough, you know, that's fine, but it would be quite nice just to have little toggles just to move them. But on saying that, look at the design of it. You know, that strip across the dashboard there. Now you've got two other displays in the car, which is really cool. So you get the driver's display here, but the passenger has one as well. And that obviously shows date and time in that, but that'll display media. So the passenger control radio and they control media in that as well. It's very thin, I think they call it the ribbon display, because it looks like it wraps around like a ribbon around the dashboard like that. Talking of the dashboard in terms of the driver, again, the font, the clarity of it, you know, the font Lotus is using is really nice and it's really clear. You know, so the speed bang in the middle there. Your distance, your battery battery percentage and your range to go there, tells you what drive mode you're in. It also tells you the speed limit, obviously warning, and it tells you what safety systems you've got on or off. And it will also tell you your level of brake regen, which I'll go on to in a second. And then above that is your driver attention camera monitor thing that all cars have got to now have. But again, it seems like there's a lot of information going on in there when I've just listed them, but actually the way it's all spaced out, it's really easy to read. And there's also a head-up display in the car, which you can configure as well and have various different, so I'll take my foot off the brake. So you can have various different bits of information in the head-up display. Now, let me just talk about that as well. This is maybe the only slight thing, and again, this is my OCD at play here. The shroud for the head-up display is done in this matte carbon fibre, which is lovely. But then you've got glossy carbon fibre here, which my wife loves. She got in it the other day and she went, I'm so glad they haven't done that piano black. And I have to agree. She said, this looks quite classy and I really like that. So although it does still get the odd fingerprint and stuff, at least it's not that piano black. But it would have been nice maybe if they'd matched the carbon from the head-up display to that. It just bugs me a little bit. There's two different types of carbon fibre in the interior. But that's very much an OCD thing on my behalf, because you also get carbon fibre down the side of the centre tunnel here and on the door panel as well. So there's no piano black on the car at all, which I'm pleased about. Oh, and on the wheel as well. See the glossy carbon on the wheel. And again, look at the wheel. Really, really beautiful wheel. You know, again, oddly shaped, you know, that sort of slight octagonal sort of like shape to it, but it's the thickness of it's just right, and your hand just falls neatly into there. And you've got physical controls on it, so you can move them side to side, these little rocker switches for things like your track search, if you're playing media, and then volume up and down, and then you've got your controls for your cruise control over on this side, over here. Right. I mentioned there about the driving modes. Let me just show you this as well. It looks like you've got two paddles behind the steering wheel. In effect, you've actually got four, because the two paddles are then split in two. And your drive mode, you go up your drive modes by the right one. So look there, oh, and then into individual. And you can feel, when I into sport there, the seat clamps in on you. So when you go to, you've got range, tour, sport, and individual. The car also has air suspension as well, two-chamber air suspension. In sport, it'll lower itself down. It'll also lower itself down when you get out and lock it. It just lowers itself down. And also when you're in sport, your active rear spoiler comes up, and it changes the speed at which it comes up and then goes back down again. But you can do it, you know, yourself manually. So you've got the two paddles on the right will go up and down your drive modes. The two paddles on the left will either add brake regeneration or take it off, and the minus one takes it off. Thank you, Lotus, you've done it the right way. That's how. Why do other cars take it off by pulling on the plus paddle and put it on by taking the minus? Lotus have done it right. But again, these are metal in the way they feel, and they've got that sort of like knurling on the back of them. And this is what I'm talking about. The qualities are just staggering, really good. You know, you've got nice bounce back on the leather on top of the doors, and you know, where it wraps around here. You know, consistent stitching. It actually meets, you know, the dashboard into the door. Then you've got the Alcantara strip in the door. The seats are really lovely. I did a really long drive in the car the other day, and you can extend the squab of the seat. The only thing I would say is, on these seats, I would like the head restraints to be a bit further forward, or at least maybe to be able to adjust further forward, but they don't. I always find my head's just too far back. On the Porsche, and I think the Audi do it as well, where you can push a button and they slide a bit forward. Mercedes do that as well. So that'd be quite nice, but I think you can also have different style of seats in the car. I should have mentioned in the back, you can also have it as a 4-seat car or a 5-seat, depending obviously on what you want. So yeah, the quality is incredible. I mean, really, really good. There's not a squeak, a rattle, a groan, a creak, nothing from it. It is absolutely, it's really very good. But, and this is my only thing with it, okay, and maybe we'll talk about it a bit more when I'm out driving it. You sit quite high in the car. You know, I was saying earlier, it's quite a tall car. And as much as they're saying, you know, Grand Tourer, GT car, it's more saloon car-like than GT car. So it's more towards, dare I suggest, Mercedes, EQE, EQS sort of driving position than it is Audi e-tron, Porsche Taycan, which I personally would have preferred. I'd quite like to be just a little bit lower in the car and just feel a bit more at one with it, you know, because when you are in the car and you are getting a little bit of a shifty on, you just feel that you're just sitting a little bit too high. You feel like you're sort of sitting on it and you kind of just rolling around just a wee bitty too much. I'd really prefer to be sort of like hunkered down in the car, just to have a slightly better, you know, sort of like slinkier driving position, a much more intimate driving position. That would make me feel a lot better. And that's my only real criticism. And perhaps, again, maybe the design, whilst it is really nice, it maybe lends itself to that style, you know, where it's not a higher dashboard and you feel a bit more enveloped into the driver's seat, which would have been nice. It all seems a bit lower down, so it makes you feel heightened up. Now, some people are going to like that. I'm not going to, you know, it's a personal criticism. Some people will like that, you know, for positioning the car and stuff. I personally would prefer to be a bit lower. But there we go. But other than that, I genuinely can't really fault the interior. You know, the KEF surround sound system, you know, these beautiful metal speaker grates, if you like, up here. The way these are machined out of aluminium, gorgeous, absolutely stunning. You know, as I say, Liz mentioned, you know, the glossy carbon fibre, how much you really like that. There's storage as well. I should have said that, sorry. There's a deep bin in there with some USB-C and a 12-volt socket there. You've seen the glove box, and there's also some decent door bins for your sunnies and stuff like that. But yeah, other than the driving position, I can't fault this car at all. And I say it's not uncomfortable. It's a personal thing. It's a really comfortable driving position. The seat holds you well, you know, and the steering wheel's nice, and the relationship you have with the pedals and stuff, that's all fine. I just feel it's a little bit too high for me. But other than that, I genuinely am blown away by the interior of this car. Now, the Emeya gets a 102 kilowatt hour battery, and that's its gross capacity, so it's 90 odd something, it's kilowatt hours usable capacity. And in this S model, which is going to be called 600 from later this year, that means it's going to get up to 379 miles of range according to WLTP figures. Now, in fairness, the week I've had the car, and I've done some long drives in it, I've averaged just under 4 miles per kilowatt hour. I don't think that's bad for the type of car it is, and dare I suggest for the performance that's on this car. You know, so its efficiency has actually been really, really good with me. The other thing about it that is excellent, apart from that silly electric charger flap, is the fact that it charges at speeds up to 335 kilowatts, which is phenomenally good. Meaning you can go from a 10 to 80% charge on a 350 kilowatt ultra rapid charger in just 18 minutes. Superb. That's what you want in a sort of like a grand touring car. You don't want to be stopped for too long. You want to be on your way. So good efficiency, long range, short charging times. Fantastic. The car also has an onboard 22 kilowatt AC charger as standard. Obviously you can do it an 11 kilowatt or a 7 kilowatt. If you're doing it from a 7 kilowatt wall box like I've got, like my Anderson one, then you're looking at going from flat to full in 15 hours 45 minutes, because there's a big old battery in this. But good efficiency, long range, fast charging speeds. Absolutely brilliant. Right. Now, this is not a slow car, okay? So although this is the S, the least powerful of the two cars, what will now forth be known as the 600, this is the slower of the two. It's dual motors, front and rear, so all-wheel drive, 603 horsepower. 0 to 60 is dispatched in 4.1 seconds. If you do want more, I can't see why, but if you did, then obviously you've got something like, you know, the Emeya R, and then obviously what we're known as the 900, which is 905 horsepower, and that'll do 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds, which is ludicrous as far as I'm concerned. Oh, talking of which, that's a car actually to think of. You know, in some respects, you know, the Tesla Model S Plaid is a car that, you know, it's sort of, I suppose, when you start thinking of these big fast electric cars that aren't SUVs, you know, Taycan, e-tron GT, the Tesla Model S Plaid, that's a car that falls sort of between two stools. And in some respects, so does the Emeya. Let me just briefly explain what I mean by that, because this isn't as sharp a drive as, say, the Taycan. The Taycan is more of a driver's car. When I was surprised at that, I genuinely thought this would be, you know, the driver's car of all this sort of like, of all this category, if you like. You know, the one that you would really sort of like attack a road with. And I took the car out for a long drive the other day, and it was a real mixture of roads, you know, motorway, dual carriageway A roads, type B roads, you know, country lanes, that type of thing. And yeah, it feels big. I mean, it is a physically big car. There's no getting away from that fact, and it doesn't exactly shrink itself round you. Now, on saying that, it's not exactly a big barge. You know what I mean? It does drive really well. It does handle brilliantly. It's just not as sharp as I was sort of expecting, and therefore, dare I suggest, not as sharp as a Taycan. So there we go. It is more towards the likes of, you know, the Mercedes AMG EQE, the BMW i5 M60, that style of car. So it's trying to combine both things, but I'm going to say it's more towards the sort of luxury, I don't want to say saloon car, but you know what I'm saying. It is more that Grand Tourer style. It's a car, I must admit, I would really love to take up to Scotland, you know, for that long schlep up the M6, because I have to say, on the motorway, the refinement of this thing is absolutely off the chart. It is silent on the motorway, which is an interesting thing, because they haven't done sort of like, you know, one of the, you know, like Porsche do, what is it they call it, digital sound, no, that's BMW, call it digital sounds or whatever, you know, those sort of fake digitized engine noises and things. Lotus haven't done that with this car. You know, I think that's a good thing. You know, it doesn't, I like them in certain cars, don't get me wrong, but I also quite like the fact that they've just gone, no, it's a big four-door GT car, it doesn't need to try and sound like a spaceship or anything like that, or like a big Dodge Ram SRT or whatever that was. You know what I mean? They've not tried that, and I'm cool with that. I'm absolutely fine with it. Now, I'm just going to turn off the things here, because I say they're really easy to turn off. So lane keep assist off. Yes, I want to deactivate it, and automatic speed limit off. Job done. That's as easy as that is to do. That's really cool, I think. It's really easy to do. So, suspension, right. Multi-link setup at front and rear, dual chamber air suspension as well. So again, at speed, you know, the car will sort of like lower itself down, make it much more slippery through the air. But in the standard mode, or what we call Tour, which is the sort of like the normal drive mode, the compliance in suspension is good. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was a word I used when I was talking about the interior, and I did think it would almost apply as well to the drive. And please forgive me for saying it, but I genuinely thought there might be a slight brittleness to it. You know, the suspension, the way the car felt over bumps and things, you know, as I say, because they're normally used to building light cars. Would they go on where we're building, you know, a car with such weight behind it? Would it feel a bit brittle? Would the suspension crash a little bit? No, absolutely not. Once again, Lotus have excelled in the chassis department. And as I say, whilst it's not a sharp driver's attack weapon, it accomplishes what it sets out to do very, very well. There's just the odd little bit there. You know, you come round a roundabout and there's a little dip in the tarmac, or a little sort of like crack there, and you just feel it. You just feel it, and that's it. I am led to believe that the S is actually the better of the two cars. It has that, dare I suggest, purer Lotus sort of feel to it. You know, there's almost a little bit of you that thinks you could maybe play with the throttle a little bit mid-bend and it wouldn't feel like all hell's about to break loose, which it does in the R. You know, so the S is probably the sweeter of the two when it comes to the way that the car actually handles. The steering is really nice. There's a nice weight behind it. You know, you picture into sort of like, I mean, whether it's a tight bend, you know, a tight hairpin bend, or whether it's a more sweeping open bend. And again, you get the, you know exactly where the wheels are, you know exactly what's happening, and it just, you know, the way the power comes in, it just gets you around it, and there's a lot of feedback from it. Gavin Kershaw, who is the sort of the Lotus or head of Lotus, and you know, sort of like driving dynamics or whatever job title he has, but he is the sort of handling guru at Lotus. Seemingly, he did sort of sign off a lot of the chassis work on the car, whilst the car is built over in China. He did a lot of development work of the car across in Germany at Nürburgring and places like that, and he has signed it off. And you can tell. And whilst, as I say, maybe his 40 is those sort of like, you know, real small sort of like sports cars, it does accomplish what it sets out to do really, really well. It's a very accomplished car, this. But don't expect it. God, I forgot how wide this thing is. I'm going through this width restriction. Don't expect it to be like an Elise or an Exige. That's all I'm saying. But then don't expect it to be a big wallowy Herbert like an S-Class. Okay? It's somewhere between the two stools. And maybe you might think that means that it's it's trying to be a bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none. No, I don't think it is. I genuinely do think that, you know, it knows exactly what it wants to be. You know, it is a big Grand Tourer, and that's exactly what it excels at. There's a little bit more bump and thump from the suspension at lower speeds than I would ideally like, but as I say, it doesn't send massive shudders through the structure of the car. It doesn't feel like the whole thing's just about to fall apart underneath you. Right, let me just talk about the driving modes now, because this is what I really like. Your driving modes are accessed via these the paddle up on the steering wheel here. So if I go from Tour into Sport now, seats clamped, Jesus, the seats clamped me now. And it really, whoa, that's excellent. That is superb. That is such a nice throttle feel. And I see what they mean now. You know, you can be just a little bit more deliberate with the throttle and get onto the power. And it doesn't all of a sudden just explode. It's a real linear sort of like delivery. It feels very mechanical. And then it feels like a Lotus. That's when it feels like a Lotus. Yeah. Oh, and it sits down and I like that. The other thing I really like is the brakes. Now, you can have carbon ceramics on it. This is on steel brakes, this particular car. But it's the regeneration I really like. So there's 4 levels of regen, apology. But see, when you take it off and it goes into the coast mode, it really coasts, and I think that helps with the efficiency. So the efficiency I got the other day that I was telling you about out on the motorway, because you're not constantly on the throttle fighting against brake regen, you take your foot off the throttle and it really just keeps the speed up, and it just coasts down, and it's lovely. So under a really light throttle load you can maintain a really nice speed on motorway, and that helps its efficiency. But when you do use the pedal, when you do actually use the brakes, let me just stand behind me. Jeepers. Absolutely hauls the thing up. And I say, remember, this is a heavy old car. This is a really heavy old car. So that's excellent. I really like, and there's a good feel from the pedal. And if you do like, you know, that more kind of one pedal driving, then obviously you can have that. I think, you know, this was a car I approached with a really open mind, because I knew it wasn't going to be, you know, like a little life sports car. Of course it's not. You know, the car I really sort of like envisaged it being like was an Aston Martin Rapide, which is a car I have a lot of experience in. And that is exactly what it is. It is exactly like the Rapide in the sense that, you know, the Rapide feels like, dare I suggest, a big DB9, which is in essence what it actually is. And it's all the better for that. It's a really well-judged car, the Rapide, and that is exactly what the Emeya is. They've got it. The balance they've managed to get between, you know, absolute handling, ride quality, and comfort and refinement, albeit it is more towards the latter two of those, that side of the scale. They've managed to do really, really well. The steering's precise, there's great brakes, there's a lovely feel to the actual pedals on the car, the way that, you know, the power delivery works. It handles well enough. It is more suited to the more sort of like open A roads and those flowing bends, but that's fine. If you want something that's sharper to drive than that, then dare I suggest, you're not going to be buying a big four-door GT car, are you? You're going to be buying the likes of an Emeya or a Porsche 911 or something like that. I'm really impressed with this car, and I think it shows I think it shows the future of Lotus really, really well. And I think, you know, things are changing, and if, you know, for Lotus, if they're going to continue to make drivers' cars, they need to appeal to a broader spectrum of people, and dare I suggest people like me, obviously, but with more money, who have got kids, you know, who do want to drive something like a Lotus, who do want to drive something like a Lotus, who do want to have some fun when the time's there, but also need that sense of practicality, but also might need to turn up, you know, take the family away on holiday, or to turn up to a business meeting in something nice. They've got to do a real kind of Swiss Army knife car. And I think they've done it with Emeya. I really do. I'm really impressed with this car. Really impressed with it. And it's not the speed. It's almost everything else bar the speed that impresses me with it. Wow. Welcome to the new age of Lotus, folks. Right, pricing. What's a bit confusing at the moment, because I say the range is having a bit of a rejig, if you like. Gone is the old S and R, and you're going to have 600 and 900, and then sort of trim levels within those two different variants, if you like, which you didn't get before. So I'll talk you through it, and then I'll give you a price, obviously, for this particular car we've got here on test. So, the range is going to start with the 600, the Emeya 600 at £84,990. So lower starting price for the car than it was before. Then you go move up to the 600 GT, which adds another £5,000 onto that. And then you go to the GT SE, which adds another £5,000 onto that. So that's up at 95,000. So you've got a walk there from 85 to 90 to 95 within those three. Then you make a big jump up to the 600 Sport SE at £104,990, okay? And that's your top of the range 600, which is plenty fast enough, as we've seen. If, however, you want a little bit more, you can have a 900, which is effectively going to replace the old R model. Oh, I should have said, by the way, as tested, this particular car, this S model with the options on it, is 111,015. So, you know, not cheap. Anyway, as I say, that's if you want the extra 300 horsepower, then you need to move up to the 900, which is available in either the Sport at £129,990 or the Sport Carbon at £139,990. So not exactly a cheap car, but then neither is its competition. And dare I suggest, the Lotus badge, you know, in other cars, if you look at Elise, Emeya, things like that, they've been competing with Porsche and Audi. So that's what they're doing here, exactly the same. It's a premium badge car, offering a premium driving experience at a premium price. Right, so the competition. Well, I mentioned two of them there, didn't I? And they're the main ones that you think of, isn't it? You know, when you look at the Emeya, you go, that's going to rival Porsche Taycan, and obviously if you're thinking of Taycan, then obviously it's going to rival the Audi S e-tron GT. But it also, I think, has other rivals as well, from the likes of Mercedes AMG with the EQE 53 and maybe the EQS. You know, I mean, it's a much bigger car, but as I say, it's only 150mm shorter than an S-Class, remember, and the EQS is effectively the electric S-Class. So you maybe think of EQE and EQS, but certainly the AMG-tuned models when it comes to that. BMW i5 M60, I see that as a competitor for this car as well. You know, so again, you know, sort of very dynamic, very sports saloon style of car. You know, eking into, as I say, this seems to have a foot in both camps, GT, saloon car, so certainly the BMW i5, I think, is a rival for it as well. But there's another rival that we haven't seen yet. Well, we sort of have, and we haven't seen it in production form yet, and that's Polestar with the new Polestar 5 that's coming, I think, at the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. That is going to be a rival for this car, and bear in mind, Geely, as well as owning Lotus, also own Polestar. So there's a little bit of family rivalry in there then. So here's what we like, and also what we don't like about the new Lotus Emeya. Well, we love its styling. We're big fans of the interior technology, the materials used, and its build quality. It's impressively refined. Like I say, the car's build quality is seriously impressive. It has good electrical architecture, and its grand touring credentials. We don't like, well, it's not as sharp a driver's car as you might have expected from one wearing the Lotus badge. The interior, whilst well built, does lack a little bit of soul in its design. And for us, the driving position just feels a little too high for a high-performance GT car. If you approach the new Lotus Emeya with romantic thoughts that it's going to be just like your Elise or your Exige, or in fact any Lotus product from the last 30 odd years, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. After all, this isn't exactly the car that we've become renowned to seeing the Lotus badge on the front of, is it? It's not a lightweight two-seat sports car. It is a large, four-door, heavy, it's almost 2.5 tons, remember, four-door all-electric Grand Tourer. It's a completely different product for the company. But that doesn't make it a bad car, and in fact, more importantly, that doesn't make it a bad Lotus. In fact, it makes it the very opposite. This is an exceptionally good Lotus, one of the best the company has ever done. It's just a very different type of car from them. It's all very well looking back with romanticism, but a bit like a divorced couple, it's nice to look back and think of the good times, but remember there were some bad times as well. That's why you got divorced. You need to look forward, you need to look to the future if you're going to lead a happy life from here on in. And that's exactly what Lotus are doing. If they've got to build cars like the Emeya and the Electra to ensure that we're still going to get the Lotus badge on the front of a small two-seat sports car, then that's what they have to do. They know the world has changed, they know the market is there, they've taken a risk, but importantly, the risk has paid off. Because trust me when I say this, while it's not as sharp a drive in some respects as the likes of the Taycan, what it is a very brave new world and a very brave new product from Lotus. And the fact that they've made it as good as the new Emeya, as far as I'm concerned, ensures the future for the company is going to look very, very bright indeed. This is a brilliant car, be under no illusions. Thank you for watching another road test review on AutoEV. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you then press the little bell button that's down below. And you'll do that because then you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this week's review, and I sincerely hope you have, give it a little thumbs up for me. And don't forget, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think of the new Lotus Emeya? Are you a Lotus driver at the moment? Have you got one of the older sports car styles? Has this turned you on? Has it turned you off? Are you thinking, absolutely, that's not a Lotus as far as I'm concerned, I don't want anything to do with it? Or are you now thinking, actually, that makes an awful lot of sense? Would it tempt you away from a Porsche Taycan or an Audi e-tron GT or a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, I'm sure you will. Now remember, we're also across on all social media platforms, so if you're into your Facebook, your TikTok, your X, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, we're there as well, so if you want to give us a follow there, that would be appreciated. And maybe if you're in the marketplace for an electric car, it might not be a new Lotus Emeya, maybe you're thinking of, I don't know, a used Porsche Taycan or a BMW i4 or something like that, but you need to know more information about it. How do you find out? Well, here's how. Stay on the AutoEV homepage on our YouTube channel, and just at the top there's a small magnifying glass. If you type the name of the car you're interested in that space, if it's been a new electric car in the UK in the last 6 years, then of course we will have subjected it to the road test, the actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that, folks, is the AutoEV one. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you again soon.